like I personally don't get why, it's okay to eat cow but not eat dogs. Some people might come at me with this counter argument like, Vietnam eats dogs too, there's no problem, we'll just eat everything. And I mean, I guess that's less hypocritical, but still, I think all animals should deserve a chance to live a happy life. Yeah. And I get it, like some people don't care, right? They're like, my happiness comes first.
Okay, welcome back, guys, to episode 2. I'm joined today with a man of many talents. His main talent we're going to speak today is about wrestling. And we have our first vegan wrestler on the podcast.
Hello.
Delighted to have you on the podcast. It's been a while. We've tried to get you on. It's finally happened. So
yeah.
How are you doing today?
Well, it's great to be here. I just had a really nice lunch.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. What did you eat?
I had a pad thai. And it was pretty worth it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool, dude. So just tell me about yourself. Like, obviously, we think you're got a really interesting story to share with our audience today. So just wondered, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. So I am a pro wrestler. That's what most people know me for, at least currently. Mm-hmm. And I am a vegan. And so that comes with certain, I guess, not so positive connotations, like
the vegan thing, right?
Yes, the vegan thing, because it does not really strike most people as something that a pro wrestler would do.
The purpose of this podcast is to kind of connect with people who have made this lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. And like in Vietnam, I found, compared to the West, that change can be challenged a little bit more by the community than perhaps others. So could you tell us a little bit about that process and how it happened and why you made that decision?
So how it happened for me was in 2017. So mm-hmm. I was in 10th grade at the time.
Wow. Okay.
Girl I was dating, she brought up veganism after reading How Not to Die by Gregor.
Yeah.
Right. And then she started talking to me about it, and I was like, not convinced.
Okay.
I didn't get it, right?
From a nutritional
standpoint, okay. And I could see the merit in a moral argument. Right. And
okay.
but yeah, eventually, as I kept talking and became more informed, it got through to me. Right. And so I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started becoming vegan.
No. Was your girlfriend a vegan at that time as well?
Yes.
And did you feel any pressure from her?
No, I didn't feel like I had to do it because I was dating her.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just legitimately convinced. Yeah. So I told my parents about it. Mm-hmm. Right. I tried to, work through the same kind of scientific arguments and how it's good for your health, how it's, I don't believe that animals should be hurt, and it's good for the environment as well. And initially, my mom was okay with it. She's like, okay, that sounds great. Good for you. Mm-hmm. My dad didn't really believe that I could actually pull it off in a vegan diet that's healthy for me, right? Especially at that age where he believes, we're growing a lot, and so we need to be getting our nutrition dead right. Yeah. So there was a slight opposition there. And then over time, there was also a slight tension in the family, because when I would become vegan, there would be less opportunities for me to go out with my family if they wanted to go somewhere else that's not vegan, right? Yeah. So that was a point of tension. But around 2019, my dad started coming around to it. He was okay with the idea. And he would actually go on to try veganism for himself. He did this thing where he would rotate on and off. So 1 month vegan completely, and
Okay.
it was like effortless for him.
Okay.
Yeah. And even when like other people would ask him like, yo, come join the party.
The Nyao session.
Yeah,
or
the
something,
Nyao, right? Yeah. And like,
yeah.
it was like, no, I'm vegan for this month. You can't break me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's definitely doable. But yeah.
So you see, the good thing now is like your parents kind of support that decision.
Yeah,
they don't
they
have
get
any
it,
issues
yeah.
with it, right? But your dad is he vegan still, or is he practicing a plant-based diet, or
Well,
still doing the 1 month?
yeah, I think that's the current setup.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
You do get a lot of like part-time vegetarians who kind of follow the lunar calendar.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, and I think that's growing now, because like I eat at vegetarian vegan restaurants all the time, and then like when I know it's the moon day, I kind of avoid those places because I'm like, okay, like I want to get in and out. I don't want to wait an hour for my meal. Yeah, so okay, that's cool. It's definitely growing, right? Okay, so let's get on a little bit to like wrestling, because like I said, the reason I wanted you on the podcast today and share your story is because like you said, you were doing something that is traditionally associated with masculinity.
Yes, definitely.
And there's I for whatever reason, I feel like eating animals, like especially like animals that are often in cages, is somehow some like kind of masculine thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just kind of curious about how people respond to that sort of in the audience, like as a spectator, but also like the people that you train with, because I imagine you've got like some like kind of, what do you call, like some people call them like protein bros kind of thing, where it's like they're constantly, and I was like that too. I mean, I'm pretty skinny now, but like there was an age where I was like obsessed with protein. I wanted to get muscle, and you're just kind of obsessed with protein, and you only think it comes from meat. And I would be eating like three chickens a day sometimes, probably, right? So so what is the reaction from people?
So yeah, like there was this joke that I would often say, like when you tell people that you're plant-based or you're vegan, suddenly they become nutritionists, right? Like out of nowhere. And they're like, oh, where do you get your protein? That's like the biggest question. And when I became vegan, I actually became more nutritionally conscious, because before I was just eating whatever. I didn't care, like, I had to get this thing right. Yeah. Right. Because if I was just a vegan and eating like Oreos and drinking Red Bull, I'll die. Right. And especially I'm doing something that is as physically demanding as pro wrestling. Yeah. Right? Where it's not just, trying to be good looking from a bodybuilding perspective, but also having actual health. Right? So nutrition is incredibly important. So understandably, people who don't know, they'll be like, yeah, how do you get it right? And there wasn't that much of attention. Like people did ask, right? How do you do it? Because they just don't know. Yeah. But then I obviously told them, yeah, you can get your protein from, beans, tofu, mushrooms. So protein is actually not the hard part, right? We know that, right? Yeah.
What do you think is the hard part?
What do I think is the hard part? Hard part, I mean, in Vietnam, it's not difficult at all. It's like if you wanted to be nutritionally conscious, even as like a meat eater, then you just got to plan your groceries. That's the hard part. And so it's the same difficulty for being a vegan. Yeah. And obviously, when you want to bodybuild, like high protein intake is a concern. And you might say, oh, chicken is like very, very cheap as a protein, like protein per gram per dollar, whatever. But that's one part is because it's heavily subsidized. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if many people are aware of the subsidies in the meat industry, but I mean But
even then, like I feel like I can get adequate protein from non-animal sources without it being expensive.
Yeah, I think like there was. Have you seen the Game Changers?
Yeah, right.
And there's that bit in there where it's like you can get 20 grams of protein from like 2 slices of bread and peanut butter. Exactly. Right. And I mean, in Vietnam, the food culture is a little bit different, but in the West, people usually always have bread at home.
Yes.
And peanut butter is like, you don't need to refrigerate it, just keep it in the cupboard. And you've got like 20 grams of protein, which is like the same, you know, it's even that's got more protein than 2 eggs.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, and then people for some reason associate eggs as being this like high protein food. But yeah, we can get all our protein from plants. But as a like athlete, do you have like a number that you kind of look at when you're planning your diet, like a certain amount of grams?
So right now I'm not really doing that, but like it's a goal that I'm aiming towards. So it's like 1 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Right. That's.
Am I allowed to ask you your body weight? Like
my body weight is.
Because I mean, if I was a woman, I would probably get a slap to the
67 kilograms right now.
Okay. So that would be like less than 100, probably, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes I get like, you know, you get these comments like, oh, I need like 4 grams of protein per kilogram per day.
Oh, that's
like,
insane.
Yeah, but that's what people think, right? And of course, I think like, you know, if you eat like brown rice and tofu, that's like 20 grams, right? Even if you have a glass of soy milk, you get like 8 grams from that, right? So this protein thing is...
It's very doable.
Yeah. Cool, man. And what about the you know, because another thing you get is, oh, it's so expensive, you know, Mac, where? Like, what, like, are you able to sort of like, I mean, if you're still a student, right? You're still studying. So like on that kind of like, Yasinvian kind of like student budget, are you able to hit those macros?
Well, I'm lucky to not have to, you know, pay for my own food and housing. So so that's definitely like the privilege that I enjoy. But even then, I think to be nutritionally fit, it would have cost you the same anyway if you were a meat eater, right? Okay. If you were a Yasinving and you struggled as a meat eater, got it. It doesn't change. Yeah.
Got it. So basically you're saying like being a vegan is not more expensive than being a meat eater.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? You hear that, folks, right? Yeah.
It's just...
Some people will be surprised,
It's just as easy or it's just as hard. It just depends on if you want to do it. Yeah.
Okay. And so where did you get that like knowledge from?
The knowledge of...
like how to, you know, eat that diet that supported your athletic endeavors and everything, right?
Well, you know, I've had to look into nutrition in general. So my first source that I felt like is a nice guideline was Harvard's Healthy Eating Plate. Right? Theirs is not strictly plant-based, but it's like it's very clear mostly, that it can lean towards that. Yeah. And I mean, I just did a lot of Googling, like, okay, legumes, nutrition facts, protein per 100 grams. Yeah. And then I actually do intend long-term to make sort of like a database for just like how much would it cost in this area to get this kind of protein. Okay. And like that would be really helpful.
Well, we look forward to sharing that with the community. Huh?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure what your wrestling friends are okay with it, family okay with it. So I think we go back to kind of the start or the reason for this podcast is like, why do you think people believe that eating meat is manly? Like it's a masculine thing.
I think, and also this ties in a lot with like the wrestling crowd, which is because it's violence. Yeah. Masculinity is very much associated with violence. And if you do like 2 seconds of thinking, eating meat is violence. Right? You have to kill an animal. Yeah. And that's where I think the perception comes from. Whereas, you know, you think agriculture, it's like a more tame thing. You just sit around and you wait for it to grow. And, and you're not doing any fighting. You're not doing any struggling. That's not manly, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's like the man is associated with the hunting and the gathering is associated with the female, right? So... yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I guess what can we do to change that? I guess like,
what can we do to change that? Well, I think for me, I'd like to see a idea of masculinity that does not necessarily have to do with needless violence. That's why I do pro wrestling, right? Which is a controlled and healthy expression of violence. Yeah. Right.
That's I like that.
And it doesn't have to come from killing animals, you know. And you look at this man who's brave enough to eat a freaking vegetable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I like to, I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, I like, when I was growing up, we had the Cub Scouts. I don't know if you know Cub Scouts kind of thing. There were like times we were like teenagers and they would teach us to like skin a rabbit, and you know, and I think, yeah, that was kind of like that for me. That was kind of like being masculine, being a man was like, okay, you were like, I'm going to do this. I'm not, you know,
you gotta
no fear.
change nature.
Yeah. But I think like why is masculinity related to like doing these things, right? I think that it should be about elevating others, not causing suffering onto other beings.
I agree.
And I think that's sort of something I hope that the kind of masculinity can push towards, is like elevating others, you know, encouraging kindness and compassion and leadership, and not just, you know, like, okay, I can do the hard stuff that people don't want to do because there's blood involved, right? Yeah. And often I think that the people that, you know, that are in these situations where they have to like kill animals, I feel like after a while they kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's the only way they can deal with it, but they have to like kind of numb themselves.
Oh yeah,
you know? So
I've read a lot about that.
Wow, like, you know, I have to rise to this occasion. It's really difficult. I think after a while they
it's really traumatic.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way they can process it. So I don't think like, you know, through that exercise of farming, you know, I don't think they're sort of rising to the challenge every time. I think they just kind of like numb themselves.
They kind of like have to do it now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what would happen? So yeah, tell me a little bit about, because I'm not sure if people are going to see this when we get the edit, but like you have a brother as well.
Yes.
And a twin brother.
Yes, I do.
And like how is, and the Venom Shank is the name of the duo. Like how would people react if you kind of branded yourselves as, we are vegan wrestlers?
Right. So this is something that I've been trying to find an opportunity to build it into the storyline. It's not yet doable, but I think soon.
Why not? Why not? Is it just because of the
storyline wise? There's no real way to fit it in. We've had vegan pro wrestlers in the past, like around the world, and
who are some of them? I think
so.
We can show them on the screen now.
Yeah, so
there are
Zack
some
Sabre
in the States,
Jr.
right? Yeah.
Zack Sabre Jr. is my number one inspiration.
Yeah,
he's a very politically like aligned guy with me, and he's vegan, and he's also got a great wrestling style. Who else? There's Daniel Bryan. He used to be vegan for a time. There was some health issues, but he was a big champion of like environmentalism and stuff. Yeah. And so what was the question we were on?
Is what would happen if you became like vegan Shank or something like that? Right.
So there's how do I put it? Like a cultural trap, I guess, in pro wrestling, where these kind of progressive characters usually get put into the role of the heels, or like the bad guys, right? And this has happened with Daniel Bryan's character when he was we had a run as like this environmental champion. He had like a faux leather belt instead of a leather belt. And he's talking smack about like, why are you eating McDonald's and stuff? And I don't think that there's actually a problem with that. Maybe you can kind of spin it as like, you know, oh, you're putting this out to be like a bad guy, so it's bad in real life. I don't really believe in that. I think that for one, it definitely starts a conversation with the audience. It's like, ooh, okay, these guys might have a point about you know, animal rights, right? And it's worth thinking of. That's like already a great thing for me, to put this in front of people's minds, right? That's something I definitely want to do. Some of our closer fans, they have seen me talk about vegan food. So I do this thing where I just, every time I go out for a vegan meal, I post a picture and I say, "Do chay ngon quá."
Yeah, I've seen.
Right? And it's caught on. It's caught on with some people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I could do that on, in ring or like in front of a video camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah,
That would be awesome.
Yeah, as I said, I think like a lot of people wouldn't expect that of you, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. Okay, cool, interesting. All right, so basically not yet, but maybe in the future
I want it to happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, we fully support that. Okay, and has that stereotype affected any of your relationships at all?
I actually didn't know that it did, but then sometime after high school, a friend of mine told me that like that it did actually alienate me from some people. I didn't think it was like such a big deal personally.
Did you go through that phase where it was like animal rights was all you talked about, all you cared about?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Because that can be the challenge, isn't it? Because I looked at it, I was like, wow, like trillions of animals are dying needlessly every year, and people carrying on like nothing is happening. And and at that stage, it was quite hard to deal with.
Yes.
And I understand that can happen with others, and if that becomes your personality at your time, which I would try and encourage you not like try and do it in a safer way, right? To accept that decision, but not try and put your hatred out on others. But I had that experience, and I think that and then I've mentored other people through that experience as well.
Right.
And it's not easy. But is that part of perhaps the reason for that?
So yeah, I mean, it's like a big caveat, right? Like you gotta watch it. It's a political decision. That's what I think. Like you have to decide. Okay, do I want to bring this up? Or do I want to not rock the boat with these relationships, right? And I don't regret rocking the boat at all because I've actually inspired several people in my life to at least consider the change.
But then in turn, those people can influence others as well.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
And that's an amazing feeling. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, back to the health part, right? So like have you noticed like any health benefits being on a plant-based diet? Because actually I suppose like because you started it when you were in grade 10.
Yeah.
So it was like 4 or 5 years ago, right? 4 or 5 years? Okay. And so, I mean, there's not that much.
Well, I know for a fact that if you do it right, and I think I'm doing it all right, you can bodybuild.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I definitely look bigger than I did before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think most people now most people are familiar with like Lam Wat or Sư Tử Ăn Chay, right? So you've got a vegetarian or vegan bodybuilder, right? And there's a few others I've seen as well. So yeah, I think that most people are becoming aware of that now, that like you don't necessarily have to eat meat to get your protein, but they'll always say, but it's easier, if you eat meat, right? It's more difficult on a vegan diet.
I myself personally, I didn't really pay attention to this before, but I suspect that I might have cleared up my skin a bit. Yeah. I know a lot of my friends, when they eat less meat and drink less milk, that their skin flares up a lot less.
Something like 92% of people in Southeast Asia are like lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's quite like that statistic. It's like what, like everyone
That's
can't
pretty
digest
much,
milk,
yeah.
and I'm like, well, I mean, but people are drinking more and more dairy products or consuming more dairy products now, and people kind of consume them in a normal way, like milk teas in the last like 5 years become such a huge thing. And you see like, hundreds of Grab drivers with like 10 or 20 like kind of cups of milk tea and they're all delivering. And I think, I like dairy products pre-vegan because I felt like they filled me up. Right. But in truth, I don't think it was that. I just think it was the gas kind of filled up my stomach and I had this like sensation of being full.
Yeah.
Which is something everyone is quite can be quite comforting, but really it's just the undigested sugars, right? Yeah. And there's a guy called Brian Turner. I don't know if you know him.
No, I don't know.
He's a vegan bodybuilder, and skin issues, and then he went like he had really bad skin issues. Like he was on I don't know if you know any of the drugs that they use to, but like he was on like the only prescription ones, because he had a real big problem with it. And but at the same time he was taking that medicine, he was drinking like 4 gallons of milk a day, because he felt like that would maybe not 4 gallons, 4 liters or something like that, because it would be like, as a bodybuilder, like liquid protein, 6 grams per 100 grams, like, easy way to get those numbers up. And it wasn't until he quit the dairy products that he saw really big change.
The casein in there is really bad. Yeah.
Does anything annoy you about identifying as a vegan or being vegan or eating plant-based?
It's I mean, I used to be frustrated with the world and how they don't really see it from where I am,
Okay.
But I get it, right? Not everyone has had the same opportunity to be exposed to the information I have, right? So now I'm a lot more understanding. But the biggest problem, at least in like, if you could afford to be vegan, the biggest problem would be that like you might see resistance from the people in your life. Yeah. Yeah. And
I feel like people are waiting for you to fail as well.
I believe that that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the huge issue is like, people they've seen you make that change, and then you have any kind of health issue, and then it's because you're vegan, it's because you're plant-based. But in reality, no diet or lifestyle is perfect.
Exactly.
And we're all going to have health challenges at some stage, right? So okay, cool. All right. So last episode we talked about speciesism.
Yes.
So I wondered if you had any thoughts on speciesism, like, because it's got that word ism in it.
Yes.
And usually, people like to generalize and say all isms are bad. I've heard that argument. And then, people went the most immediate ism that I think people kind of deal with on a daily basis would be like racism. And then all of a sudden, when you say something like speciesism, people are kind of acknowledging that, like being non-vegan is as bad as being like racist or something like that. So, I mean, like I said, it's just kind of things that I feel like the resistance to it, and people think like it's a faulty ideology, that it's just like kind of like people are clutching at straws for something to be offended by or something to identify with. But when we talk about speciesism, like what does that mean to you? Like,
well, I believe it can be a real thing, and it can be a real upsetting thing, right? Because it starts with, okay, do you care about animals' well-being or not? Right? Or do you care about this specific group of animals' well-being or not? Right? And like to me, like I don't, like I personally don't get why, it's okay to eat cow but not eat dogs. Right? And then some people might come at me with this counter argument, like, Vietnam eats dogs too. There's no problem. We'll just eat everything. And I mean, I guess that's less hypocritical, but still, I think all animals should deserve a chance to live a happy life. Yeah. And I get it. Like some people don't care, right? They're like, my happiness comes first. Yeah.
Like, why should we care about animals though?
Why should we care about animals? For me, right? So I'm what do you call it? Like a moral relativist. So I can recognize that like different people have different premises to begin with, but like that doesn't mean that like, it's okay if you think differently. I think we should all like fight for what we believe is the right view. And so that means if I care about animals, I should try to at least sway other people into thinking that other animals should be loved and cared for and have rights, so to speak. Right? Because you especially when a lot of these animals that we eat, we don't really ever see or interact with them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we don't even empathize with them at all,
or even understand them. Right? Yeah.
Whereas like with cats and dogs, it's like, they're so cute, they're so nice, they're so smart. But pigs can be nice to be around. Chickens can be nice to be around.
Yeah. And the cats and dogs are kind of a species of animals that kind of attach themselves to humans. and you know, we kind of develop. They almost, I mean, cats and dogs, they have very human qualities now. Like, and I've been watching videos with huskies recently because they just have so much personality, right? And it's just like you couldn't recognize that in a chicken because like chickens have never really been like kind of part of the household. And we've never, and me, like most people have never really interacted with these animals, right? So yeah, certainly something interesting to think about. Yeah, I just think like I don't even feel like you need to care about animals to be vegan. I just think like it's not like you just want to stop them. You don't want to cause harm. You know what I mean?
That's totally fair. Yeah.
I might not want to, look after animals or care for them or support them, but I just like don't think it's right to hurt them. And I think like even, so I feel like you don't necessarily have to be an animal lover.
That's true.
To be vegan, you know what I mean? I just think like, this is something I struggle with is because like, there's certain animals that have, 2 eyes, a mouth, and, certain appendages similar to humans. And you think you can identify, empathize with them. But then when you get to like insects and fish and shrimp,
it's not the same.
So that's what I'm saying. So like if you actually like look at the funding landscape for like where does the most money go to help animals, so much money goes into helping cats and dogs, right? And then wild animals as well, like elephants and rhinos and stuff like that. But then like when you sort of like now what like the movement is building towards is like actually if you look at the species of animals with the most suffering inflicted on them,
if you
it would
take
be
like
fish.
kill count.
It would be fish. It would be shrimp, and yet we are doing nothing to improve or care for shrimp. So and I certainly think that speciesism is a part of that because we kind of connect emotionally with those animals that are similar to us, but with the ones who are like dark and things like that. And and I sort of like look at it sometimes like even like seafood, shrimp and lobsters and things like that. They kind of they're similar kind of skin color, light color, right? But anatomically, biologically, they're very similar to like cockroaches and locusts and things like that, right? But yet those are the most like considered hideous animals in the animal kingdom. People would, run away from them. You know? So that's certainly, I think, kind of speciesism kind of manifests itself in that way, in that kind of thinking. In some countries, so this kind of interesting question, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts. So in some countries like the US, the UK, France, animal rights activists would like break into farms to capture some of the poor conditions on the farms. And even some French people used to like chain themselves into the farms to kind of disrupt the farm, things like that. Or there would be like people going into McDonald's shouting things like meat is murder, stop McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. Like, why do you think that scene exists in some countries, but like in Vietnam, there's very little of that kind of activism to...
I think for one, the material conditions here is not necessarily as good on average, like compared to the other countries. So people just don't have as much time to think about animal rights. You might say that there's potential legal repercussions that are much harsher here. I'm not sure.
Do you have a right to protest like that in Vietnam, or
there is a right to protest, but it's definitely a lot trickier to protest here than in like the States, for example.
So it sounds like it's not very like the environment is not conducive for that.
It's not.
So like you've talked a little bit about like what things that we can do to help animals or to help increase the awareness of their rights and the suffering that they have, right? What do you think we can encourage like our audience or people listening to do to kind of help create a world where animals do have more moral rights or moral considerations?
So whenever somebody approaches me about like, oh, why are you vegan? I give them like the 3-prong answer, right? So it's like, well, for one, how do you feel about the fact that you're paying for the raising and murder of an animal? Right? And, there's a whole...
Do you use that word murder as well?
I do use the word murder, right?
Okay.
And like, it's a point of contention for some people,
Exactly,
but it's
right.
like, that's semantics. If you don't think so, fine.
Yeah,
I give up.
kill, slaughter, yeah.
And then there's an argument towards protecting the environment, because we know it's a big contributor to climate change. Yeah. And then health-wise, right? There's studies that I've looked at that just show that plant-based diet, you can do it and you're healthier than if you're on a carnivore diet. And like, in terms of what kind of action can we take? For me, one of the most effective ones I believe in is just eating less meat, because that ties back to demand, right? If we cut the demand, then we will start to see less of animals being killed. And then luckily that is a thing, that's the trend that's happening in some parts of the world. I read some time ago that, like, especially like the European countries, like Germany is eating a lot more vegan stuff.
Yeah, the vegan scene over there is really big.
Right. And so it's a very doable thing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So got to be aware of these bits of information to begin to have a conversation about, okay, do we change? Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Okay, so next thing is I'm going to show you a video.
Okay.
And it's from a charity that I've followed for a long time, and I really love their work. And they, try to build awareness and challenge people's thinking. So they created a campaign, a recently video campaign, and the video was banned. And they received lots of complaints from the viewers. I'd like to share that with you today. And I don't know if you know Piers Morgan.
I do know Piers Morgan.
Yeah,
I don't like him. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
He does have his fans, right? And he's very staunch with his opinions. But he recently reacted to the video, and he thought it was a bit silly. And he did his typical thing where he responded to the people making the argument by eating that animal product in front of them on TV, But cool. So there we go. So hopefully the Wi-Fi was gonna work. Huh?
Is there gonna be like a picture-in-picture when we edit this in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
New from Killer Yogurts. The umbilical cord flavor. Produced with only the finest ingredients. The stolen milk of grieving mothers. Taste the torment in every mouthful. Blended with brutality. Be complicit. With Killer Yogurts. It's a killer. These mullah cows have never grazed a blade of grass. All mothers have their newborn babies stolen. Baby calves are denied their mother's love. Mother cows are killed when their milk production falls. Many newborn babies are slaughtered.
I got chills.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was very well produced.
Yeah. There we go.
Wow. Great message.
Yeah.
Great, like, conveying the mood. My second thought was I want to know who did the audio for that, because that was quite well done.
Yeah, sure.
I like it. I think more people should see it.
But it just seems like the reason I think it's quite quite interesting to talk about that kind of media with you, is because like sort of like in Vietnam or this region, like often people sort of advocate for veganism in a very kind of like non-confrontational way.
Yeah.
You know, oh, it's healthy, oh, it's better for the environment, but you know, I think that, you know, certainly like that argument didn't really work for me. It was sort of like seeing the suffering that was inflicted on animals in documentary form kind of helped me to make that choice. But like, do you think that maybe, you know, do you think we should in Vietnam be exposed to more kinds of these messages, or do you think it's still inappropriate? Or
I don't think it's inappropriate. I think I can't say that definitively, like, oh, knowing that pigs get CO2 stunned and prodded to death is what made me change. But it was definitely a factor, right? And how do I put this? It helps to make the arguments for veganism more diverse. And that means, you know, if one doesn't stick, maybe this will. Because some people, they might not care so much about their health. And they might not care about the environment, but maybe they feel bad about killing animals.
Yeah, I mean, so there's, for me, like, this is kind of like the issue, isn't it? Is because like the arguments that we can communicate to a wide audience would be about health and the environment. But some people, like I said, it's not a compelling argument for them. But yet we do sort of feel at this stage, I think people are still very reluctant to raise that kind of message with people because they feel like they're worried it might cause like offense or something, right?
I can understand that it would cause offense. I don't think that that's something that would get censored here, honestly.
Oh, really? Okay. We can, I mean, I think it, you know, might be fun to kind of see what, you know, try and work with the advertising companies here or the publishers and see what like their limits are. Like I imagine if you made a film as well, like with animal violence, there would be some kind of like, okay, you can show this, but you can't show that. So,
and I think maybe it's just my rough circle of people, but the younger generation of people, they're more into like satire like this. This is really nice satire.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah, and I enjoy watching that.
All right.
Just like from like a meta narrative standpoint. Yeah, it's very effective. Yeah. So, you know, and if that is what compelled people to just be exposed to that video, that's a win, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, pretty good.
Nice. All right. Okay. So I think we can wrap up fairly soon. So I think I had like a ton more questions I wanted to ask you, but I think you kind of like nicely kind of wove them into your answers.
Okay.
So I just wondered, first of all, if you had any questions for me, if you'd like to get my perspective on something, like I gave you a chance to prepare a question.
No. It's pretty good right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I guess like what, while you're here, like maybe you could, maybe just say something to people who watch this, podcast and perhaps more interested about veganism. Maybe you could say something to motivate them to try or to, and, talk to the,
I'd say, don't so easily brush off this as something that just like nut jobs do at supermarkets or like glue themselves to trucks. There's valid scientific evidence. That's what appealed to me, right? And just think for a second how you might feel about an animal in need. Yeah, because this is very doable, right? It's not gonna be bad for you if you do it right, and I can do it right, and I didn't think that I struggled very much with it. Yeah. So good luck on your way to becoming vegan and spreading the news to other people.
Okay, beautiful, man. All right, thanks, Wang. Thank you very much, man.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Okay.